Welcome to Green and Red, Scrappy Politics for Scrappy People, a regular podcast on radical environmental and anti-capitalist politics, brought to you by Bob Bazanko and Scott Parkin.
Welcome to the silky smooth sounds of the Green and Red podcast. Your co-host Scott Parkin in San Francisco, California today. And as always, I am joined by
Bob Bazanko from Houston, from the Gulf Coast, not from the elite liberal coast where you are.
yeah. I'm part of the. I'm a West Coast. I'm a left coast elitist, I guess.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not from the land of Pelosi and Feinstein.
yeah, exactly. And you know the tech giants who are so influential.
Yeah, I'm from the land of Abbott and crazy Republicans and oil companies.
Ted Cruz, you know, he's actually an East Coast elitist deep down. You know, he is.
He's Canadian.
Yeah, it's true.
Raphael is the Canadian.
That's why it's worked for Goldman Sachs. Works for Goldman Sachs, right?
Like sometimes just messing around. I always call him Raphael Cruz, but I think it's funny because sometimes liberals get mad at me and say like, "That's not cool," blah blah blah. That's kind of racist. Like it's his name.
Yeah.
And the fact that he abandoned his own name, I think, is fair game, right? Points out.
Yeah. He's just
anyway.
He kind of looks like the Zodiac killer, right?
He is the Zodiac. I'm putting it out there right now. Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer.
Yeah. So it's a scrappy Labor Day weekend. And so we're going to be reporting today live from the class war. So we're going to be talking, maybe not live, but we're going to be talking about Labor Day and labor items. And, you know, we have actually a few other things to talk about as well. And we'll probably riff and rant and ramble because, you know, that's what we do. But we're going to kick off with this week in radical history. We have a couple of items here that we wanted to bring up. First, on August 28th, 1955, is when 14-year-old Emmett Till was tortured and murdered after reportedly flirting with a white woman. His killers were acquitted. Emmett's mother held an open casket funeral to show the world her son's mutilated body, and his death actually helped encourage the civil rights movement. And then I have a little bit of a longer one that I'm going to go into, which is August 30th, 1948, was the birthday of Black Panther leader Fred Hampton. We've actually done a show on, and we'll tag it in the show notes. But Fred Hampton was born in Summit, Illinois, and he was a dynamic leader, to say the least. He was key in forming links between the Black Panthers and working class people of all races. At 21, he was assassinated in a joint operation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the darling of the liberal establishment, and the Chicago police. I'm sure they're very popular with, you know, liberals in Chicago. But you know, Fred Hampton, he was the chair of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panthers. He actually co-founded a multiracial rainbow coalition, the original Rainbow Coalition, just to be clear. It was the Coalition of the Young Lords, which was a Puerto Rican group, the Young Patriots, which was like a working class white group, Chicago street gangs that included the Blackstone Rangers. Nationally, you know, the Rainbow Coalition included the American Indian Movement, the Students for Democratic Society, the Brown Beret, the Red Guard Party, and Jesse Jackson. Hampton, and this actually kind of plays well with us reporting live from the class war. One of the things he said is, we don't think you fight fire with fire best. We think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight with solidarity. We say we're not going to fight capitalism with Black capitalism. We're going to fight it with socialism. Fred Hampton then in December 1968 was targeted and eventually assassinated by the FBI and the Chicago police. And that was actually after a number of years of a COINTEL operation, which did everything it could to discredit Hampton and the Illinois Black Panthers. But of course, as we all know, there was a larger national COINTELPRO operation to discredit the Black Panthers nationally as well.
What's amazing about Hampton and a lot of those younger guys associated at the time, Bobby Hutton and others, they read what they wrote. I mean, just it's a really incredibly informed and sophisticated analysis by these guys who were really young at the time, and it really encompassed all kinds of these ideas. And like as you pointed out, they were socialists. They understood class power and socialism very well. So Hampton is really an incredible theorist, and it's worth just kind of looking up some of the stuff he wrote. It's I think incredibly useful today, in fact. So yeah, I only have a couple things, very short. On September 3rd, 1911, the Little Red Songbook of the IWW, a new edition came out, and it included a song by the great Joe Hill called "The Preacher and the Slave." And I say that mainly because it's like one of my favorite songs. I play it all the time in my classes and stuff, which talks about the role of organized religion in suppressing people's movements. And he's specifically talking at the time about, like at the era of unionization, the ministers would come in and tell these workers not to form unions and not to organize and not to go on strike. There's a great scene in John Sayles' Mate 1 about that. Sayles himself plays the minister, right? And I also bring that up because there's a little spoiler, a little Easter egg, a teaser, I don't know what you call it, but make sure you listen to our outro music. And then the other thing I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, because we really do need to spend like a show on this sometime, on September 9th, 1971, I believe. I should write these things down. The Attica uprising broke out. Attica prison in New York, one of the biggest prison uprisings in the U.S. At the end, I think it was 11 people were dead. The guards, came in. The New York politicians led by Nelson Rockefeller kind of double crossed. They made promises, they negotiated, and then they just opened fire on them. And it really, that's something that, like, in the United States, we hear a lot about the carceral state, the prison industrial complex, and stuff like that. But sometimes the kind of use of just outright violence is kind of, we don't talk about enough. Right now in Texas this summer, the temperatures inside prisons has been in like the 120s and 130s, and they have no air conditioning. I forget how many. Didn't somebody mention that the other day? One of our guests, I think, was talking about people dying in Texas prisons because of the heat. So Attica is really famous that way. So
I actually mentioned it in like a recent Scrappy Sunday, okay, talking about how it's too damn hot.
Yeah. So anyway, Attica began 52 years ago this week.
And one thing with Attica is that, Nelson Rockefeller is actually seen as this sort of like nice liberal Republican governor of New York.
Epitome of Republican liberalism, Rockefeller Republicans.
Yeah, but then he, besides clamping down on the Attica, what happened at Attica, the Nelson Rockefeller drug laws are actually something that threw a lot of people in prison in New York State.
Yeah. It's funny, Biden announced kind of an amnesty, right? Anyone in federal prison for marijuana possession is going to be released. It's like, no one's in federal prison for marijuana possession. It's not, so.
It's actually a very small number of people, yeah.
I don't think there are any, actually, but the point is, it's like him saying, I'm not afraid of it. I'm the most pro-union president ever. I'm the most pro-environment president ever. I released the prisoners. Anyway,
and Biden's probably to the right of Nelson Rockefeller these days too.
Right, I think he's the right of Richard Nixon. So
yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, it's tough sledding. Anyhow,
what we're gonna get. Go ahead.
Gonna get scrappy. You ready to get scrappy?
Are you ready to get? I'm ready to get scrappy. For some scrappy Labor Day. So what we're going to get into is a little bit is the history of Labor Day, and then we're going to actually talk about like some current labor stuff. And just a couple of quick facts about the background on Labor Day is that it was a federal holiday that was born at the height of the 1894 Pullman's railroad strike, when 125,000 workers across 29 railroads walked off the job to protest wage strikes. And just to be clear, that was not a rail strike that was shut down by the most pro-union president in history. Historians actually say that then President Grover Cleveland was worried about losing working class votes in the run up to the 1896 election, so he signed the Labor Day bill in an effort to appease labor leaders. But with many things, there are different sides to what this history is. A parallel historical narrative claims that the bill was signed to quell leftist political dissent, and in doing so, discourage the working class from organizing against their Gilded Age oppressors. And then also many historians agree that the idea of Labor Day actually came from a laborer named Peter McGuire, who was the founder of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America, and an early leader of the American Federation of Labor, who had reportedly suggested the idea to a central labor union. We've actually done a couple of, we try to do a labor show. If we don't do a labor show, we actually repost about a labor show. We also have done shows on May Day. We have a May Day show from 2021 that's about the history of Labor Day, the history of May Day, that includes some background on Labor Day. And then another holiday that came up, I believe, during the McCarthy era called Loyalty Day. And so also part of what is at play here is that the US government and the corporate leaders actually wanted to not give workers in the US a holiday to rally around, which was May Day, which is actually recognized internationally as International Workers' Day. It actually was a workers' holiday that came out of the Haymarket riots in the 1870s in Chicago. 1880s.
1886.
1886. Sorry, for some reason I had 1876 in my mind. 1886, out of a riot, the Haymarket riot in Chicago.
Yeah, and May Day and Labor Day are kind of the same thing, right? So when we talk about one, and it's in that great American tradition of kind of co-optation, right? Cleveland actually dispatched troops to beat the strike in 1894. Another important element of the Pullman strike, because you mentioned it, is that Eugene Debs kind of had these visions of kind of like a redux of 1877, the great uprising, the national strike. And if as much as the state, Samuel Gompers and the AFL were responsible for kind of quashing it because they refused to go along. And this is, I think, something to understand, because we're seeing that right now, right? Where you have these kind of labor leaders who are making deals and offering concessions and offering cuts to get along with especially the Democratic leadership. And we're looking at this right now, right? When union leadership right now, its main goal is to kind of support Biden rather than to kind of help the workers out. So it's really an important day. And it also fits into that idea, like I said, of co-optation. When I think of Labor Day now, I think of like Juneteenth, right? Juneteenth has become like a national holiday, which is great, obviously, right? But it's you kind of offer symbolism rather than something like material, right? So at the same time, you're disenfranchising African Americans and you're destroying public education, which disproportionately is useful for poor kids. You create these, like you put your BLM flag out in the summer of 2020, and you create a national holiday out of Juneteenth, and it's really this kind of politics of symbols. And so and Labor Day, I think is kind of like that too. I mean, it's a consumer holiday, right? It's Labor Day. Let's have a sale. Or in the old days, it was like, Labor Day weekend. It's your last weekend of the summer before school starts. Go to the beach. So it's become
lots of barbecues and ball games.
Lots of barbecues and sale. Labor Day sale.
Yeah.
Stuff, yeah. Right. So anyway, but we obviously look at it differently. We think anytime there's any reason to celebrate labor and organized labor and radical labor, you should do so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think the sort of co-optation thing is like an important thing to note here, because we're, especially now where we have this sort of, upsurge of labor activity that's been going on in the country for a couple of years, if not longer. And so, Biden talking about how he's the most pro-union president. You have, lots of corporations which are, coming up with these, like what they call corporate quote unquote purpose, which are like basically mission statements that talk about how good they are to their employees, or how diverse they are, or, it's all part of that same co-optation game. And they're still like, we just did a show recently about how Apple, which, sells rainbow watch bands and, talks about how diverse it is. And the CEO is actually gay himself, but, they actually are like pulling benefits from workers if they make too much trouble. And so it's an important thing to note is like the material, the material things in which companies can give, like pay and benefits and things like that. That's actually harder to come by than just the sort of like symbolic public relations sort of moves that they make. And it goes all the way up to Biden.
Yeah, you watch this weekend, like on Twitter and social media, all of these major corporations are going to put out like tweets like celebrating Labor Day and celebrating their workers and all this.
Well, and let's also watch Labor Day for all the right-wing politicians who spend their careers trying to bust unions about how down they are with the American worker.
It's it's really quite amazing, but I think it's also really reflective of how utterly useless the Democratic Party is. That the GOP, especially since Trump, has essentially positioned itself now as this like kind of defender of working class interests, right? And they get a great deal of working class support, white working class, but Republican, right? And it's not like the Democrats offer you anything, right? But a pocket full of sand. But it's really quite remarkable that the way like kind of labor politics is developed in the US. And also, it's kind of like in Pride Month, right? Like the CIA and Lockheed Martin and the FBI all put out.
Or Martin Luther King Day too.
Martin Luther King Day, right? They put out these like, oh, we love, like, and I think the CIA put an ad this year of like a gay CIA employee, talking about how great it was at the CIA, So, and I mean, but you got to take, admittedly, right? A lot of liberals eat that shit up, right? They love it, right?
Yeah.
They're into that. So the fact that you're working for the CIA, who cares? It's diversity, right?
Yeah, and I want to say, and part of this is like a, I don't want to call it like a backlash, but if anything, it's a soft backlash. It's a response to how actually the country is shifting. There was like a new Gallup poll that came out where it says that 67% of Americans approve of unions. People want unions to succeed. It's actually a record high since the last time. It's actually surpassed the last time it was this high, which was in 1999. 57% say unions can help companies where the workers are unionized. Research backs this up, like worker retention, productivity increase with good contracts. But despite this, there's this sort of co-optation strategy used by some companies and some politicians, and media figures. Let's be real. And then there's also there's a good bit of anti-union propaganda out there for still happening.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, there was a poll like yesterday, the day before, about the auto workers, and I mean, it was like around 70% of Americans support the auto workers, and it's interesting because UPS just went on strike in the settlement. I mean, it was approved, right? But I think it left out a lot of the part-time workers, and I mean, there were some reports that Biden had pressured the Teamsters to kind of agree to this, and I'm kind of curious now as to see what's going to happen with the auto workers, because he clearly needs their support, especially in Michigan and Pennsylvania and places like that. But at the same time, he doesn't want to strike.
No, it's like one of the biggest unions in the country, like 150,000 auto workers. Yeah. And interesting thing, and like we have little regard for union bosses, but some of the things that they say is pretty interesting. Like Sean Fain, the UAW president, came out with a video and said, "Billionaires, in my opinion, don't have a right to exist," which is, playing up the class war. And I'm sure
I think Fran Drescher started that.
Yeah, and Fran Drescher, is talking about storming the gates of the
somebody told me yesterday she's been quoting Marx, in fact. So
yeah, I mean, we've done some shows on the Screen Actors Guild and the worker and the Writers Guild strike, but I mean, that's also still in play too, right?
Yeah, from the nanny in a penthouse to the shtetl,
and go ahead.
No. I just want to say one thing about labor before we segue to whatever we do next.
Okay, I have a couple of things on labor. Like with the SAG WGA strike, it was actually came out in The Intercept today that Disney, where their CEO a month or two ago put his foot in his mouth and said that even though he's earning literally $31 million a year, that derided strikers as not being realistic. Disney has actually posted a job. It's always interesting to watch corporate job boards. So apparently Disney has listed a job for PR crisis management for 300, you make $330,000 a year. It's in response to like how bad Bob Iger has like put his foot in his mouth.
Has Mandy Patinkin visited him for cigars yet?
Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman, okay.
Yeah.
Patinkin was out there that day, talking shit too. So Perlman, I want him on my side.
Yeah, like Hellboy, Clay Murrow of Sons of Anarchy, like he's a scary guy. He's a scary guy. I want him on my team too. I'm glad. And there was a video of him recently where he is talking about how these studio execs produce nothing and make money off of all of these workers, like actors and writers, who make, like there's a small piece of people in the acting profession who make the kind of money that Ron Perlman or Fran Drescher or George Clooney make.
Yeah.
But like most of them make less than $60,000 a year.
I have a couple friends who are actors. They're not obviously Hollywood stars, but they've been putting pictures of themselves on the picket line, which is really cool because these are not like inherently political people. But it's been pretty cool. And again, that same poll that showed Americans supporting the auto workers also, so they supported the actors and the writers as well. And these are all heavily supported. We're talking, I think, like at least 2/3 in most of these cases. I think in all these cases, I think at least 2/3. But we've been seeing that for 4 or 5 years now, like where unions are like kind of have a good PR. And that's the irony, like in Ohio, where I'm from, right? They used to be like I use blue and red just kind of as an example, right? Because Democrats don't really help them either. But my area was always like overwhelming Democratic and blue, heavily unionized. And now,
and your area being Youngstown, Ohio.
Youngstown, Ohio, Houston. Oh, Houston's way more blue than Ohio is. Honestly, I think Harris County might be more liberal or whatever than where you are at this point.
It's very possible, yeah.
But now, you have this area, which is Appalachia, right? Like just been devastated. You have like massive unemployment, depopulation, de-skilling, opioids, one of the worst opioids, and it's overwhelmingly Republican. It's overwhelmingly Jews. So again, the Democratic Party is just kind of offers these platitudes, but what did they actually give workers? They gave them concessions, they gave them mill closings, they gave them NAFTA, right? And until we realized that. So what I was going to say, I don't know if you have something specific. I was just going to do a little history lesson because I was actually talking about this in class yesterday, and I had prepared for it, but it just came up to me because I think it's important to understand, like when it comes to labor, there was an extended period in American life, at various times, like even before the Depression, like in the 1920s, where there was this kind of recognition among kind of what I call like smart capitalists, like Herbert Hoover, people like that rather than have this kind of constant series of conflicts that are often violent, right? And we mentioned things like Great Uprising or Haymarket, but well into the early 20th century, you had strikes, you had the police and the army being called out. So what people like Hoover created was what we've often thought. We've done a bunch of shows on this, corporate liberalism, right? And the idea there is if you, because something else we've talked about a million times, which is kind of one of our missions, I think, is to create the idea that obviously capitalism, profits is crucial, right? Private ownership. But what capitalists want, probably as much as anything, is stability. Mm-hmm. And having, like these national uprisings or having strikes or having, this fear of sabotage and monkey wrenching, scares you. And it's not good for profits. It's not good for the corporate environment. And so you started to see this.
Not good for buying and consumption.
Yeah. So you started to see this idea. And it really, even like in the 1920s with Hoover, where, if you kind of address some of the needs of your workers, not in any kind of like radical way or redistribution or anything, give them a workers' comp system or give them, maybe better wages or whatever, right? Then you're going to have harmony. You're going to have stability. And then after World War II, obviously, you had that, the whole idea there is like Fordism, protectionism, you get people working and building stuff, but you give them a decent wage and you give them a reason to go to work. And so they're less likely to create problems, right? Go on strike, form unions, all that kind of stuff. And that clearly is evaporated, really since the 70s, but especially I think the PATCO strike gave it a new impetus.
Yeah.
And so we see that now where very few companies have these kind of corporate liberal ideals when it comes to their workers. They do on issues like, these kind of, I hate to call them cultural issues because I think they're bigger than that, but they'll have like, gay marriage, they're fine on, and some major corporations have said that they would pay for their employees if they had to leave the state to have an abortion or something like that.
Right.
But when it comes to kind of the bread and butter issues of wages and working conditions and all that, I mean, they're basically there. I mean, we're still dealing in a world of Montgomery Burns, right? So, by the way, did you see Rahm Emanuel said that he's willing to eat a fish from Fukushima water? It's like Monty Burns, right? Somebody, Marge, needs to put a three-eyed fish in front of him.
Another noted attempted union buster when he was the mayor of Chicago.
Oh, Rahm Emanuel's a horrible guy. Oh, speaking of which, I forgot. I wore this just for today. It's my Wadley shirt. No gods, no masters.
No gods, no masters.
No gods, no masters. Which is kind of a decent little movie about the Italian anarchists in the 20s. If you ever want to watch something, at any rate. But yeah, so just my last thing. So keep that in mind too. That there was a period when the ruling class kind of took labor seriously enough to kind of negotiate with it and talk to it and try to create these relationships that would be kind of less onerous and less brutal, not redistributive, nothing like that. But today, I mean, it's obviously they don't even do that. They just kind of it's easier just to kind of go in and kind of impose your will, or offer them these kind of symbolic things, right? So.
The only other thing I was going to say is that the one of the things that shifted is what we're seeing with like a lot of these strikes is it's coming from teachers, it's coming from service workers, it's coming from logistics workers like at Amazon and UPS and places like that, which is actually somewhat important important sign about how the economy has shifted and who has the power. We actually have an upcoming show on the LA teachers strike with some filmmakers and some teachers actually who are leaders in the strike. But even just today around service workers, like all the workers at Dunkin' Donuts in Atlanta walked out on strike. Southwest Airlines pilots went out on strike yesterday. New Jersey's transit locomotive engineers voted unanimously to authorize a strike. And so what Bob is talking about, where the labor has not yet risen to the point where the power holders are concerned about the power of labor. We still are building towards that. And there's like just so much disruption happening, even in little bits. There's also like a criticism that comes from other quarters of the so-called left that it's not really a strike unless it's more than 1,000 people. Is that right? Is that what the number is from the U.S. Labor Department?
Let me email Doug Atwood about that.
Yeah, maybe we should maybe we can just tweet at Doug and he can clarify.
The vicar of Brooklyn.
I think it's the U.S. Labor Department number is 1,000 though, right?
That's the only thing that counts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually on this issue, I would recommend it if anybody's interested to check out Payday Report and Mike, who I think does a good job of this. Yeah.
More perfect union is another good place to check out some of this stuff too.
You know what else is striking? You have guys like this guy from Starbucks, Howard Schultz, and Bezos and those guys, not Musk, he's freaking, but a lot of these guys are also come across like kind of lefties kind of like them, right? Liberals kind of like Bezos and Schultz, because they'll speak about things like Black Lives Matter and gay rights and diversity.
Schultz was on point to be Hillary's Secretary of Labor.
I've heard that. I don't know if that's true or not, but clearly he was a Democrat, right? He was advising her. But when it comes to actual things like union organizations, I mean, these guys are Frick and Montgomery Burns. Like Schultz has basically said he'd shut down Starbucks before he allows the union in. So they come across and they have this kind of gentle demeanor.
Didn't he fire the CEO when the union drive started and take back over in order to strip us a union?
But look at how many of workers who start to organize unions have been fired. And actually, it only happened a day or two ago, and I need to read more about it. But apparently the Biden actually did issue kind of an NLRB directive, I guess it was, that actually protected organizing rights. It's kind of a move forward. So, since we rip on him all the time, I'll give him props when due, right? I still think he's met some more. He should not run for president again. As do 70% of his own party believes that, but
those are just polls, Bob. It doesn't really matter.
But I always thought that was telling, because you have like somebody like Schultz or Bezos can really sound pretty reasonable when they're talking about certain issues, especially these issues of like diversity and tolerance and all that kind of stuff. Choice, yeah, exactly. But when it comes to like the nuts and bolts of actually paying your workers, they're no different than it's like Burns and the Springfield nuclear plant, right? And I'm sorry, I'm going on a riff now, but you also mentioned, and this is just striking to me, you mentioned the auto workers, which would you say they have 150,000 members?
And at one time, something like 80 or 90% voted to authorize the strike.
Not that long ago, the auto workers had over 1 million members. as did the steel workers and all these. And so we've seen this move away from these kind of heavy duty industrial and extractive industries. And that's why, like, those numbers to me are kind of like, whether it's 1,000 worker place or a 50 worker place, they're kind of useless, right? Because the American economy's changed so much that you're just not going to have that many places that have 1,000 workers that could go, that can organize a union. And in fact, many of them have, right? And so that the future is in the Starbucks and the independent coffee shops and the
fast food,
Amazons and fast foods and little
Te-
bars.
and teachers. I think the
And
teachers
teachers have been great.
pretty significant. Teachers and grad
absolutely.
students.
Well, you know, public employees, unionization in the public sector is still fairly strong. It's like, I think, in the 35% range. It's in the private sector where it's basically disappeared. You know, in the 50s, the entire country, like had about a third unionization, like the entire country, everybody. And today, I forget what it is. It's like around 10%, but in the public sector, it's still like AFSCME and teachers and people like that. It's really strong. Yeah, they're clearly the future, and they need to be. And many of these are occurring in red states too, right?
Yeah.
And they're basically just they're wildcatting. They have these state laws where they're not allowed to go on strike, and they're just like, screw that, right?
That's what West Virginia teachers did.
Yeah, I'm waiting because, especially with these attacks on education in places like Texas and Florida, I think you'll probably see some kind of resurgence in that too. But anyway,
I think it's also important to note is, you know, it wasn't even into the like New Deal in 1930s where their, you know, collective bargaining was actually legal, and before that they just like did everything they could to like bust heads. You know, there was a shooting war between coal miners and coal bosses, and you know, on Blair Mountain in West Virginia and things like that. And now it's this more, you know, insidious, subtle way of union busting through cultural issues and PR. And, you know, we had a show recently about negotiations, about how the bosses use the labor laws to their advantage and things like that. It's much more insidious, and yet the class war, the people getting screwed over on pay and benefits, is like more real than ever.
Yeah, I would also suggest you go back to the really the first interview we ever did with the legendary Scott Lynn, where he talked about this at great length, and really made the important point, I think, that even these unions who we praise, like the CIO, when they negotiated, instituted basically agreed to a no strike clause. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you have as a worker. That's your ultimate weapon, right? The ability to withhold your labor. What did Bill Haywood say? All we got to do is stick our hands in our pockets, and they can't do anything. And so when you have these no strike pledges, you refuse to go on strike. I mean, you could go on strike before you have a union, you know, like you do that, you know. And if it's a big place, what are they going to do? They can't bring in 1 million workers to replace you, right? I mean,
I think that's what those Dunkin' Donuts workers in Atlanta are doing. I don't think they have a union. They're just walking out.
Yeah. I mean, you know, even when teachers go on strike, you end up getting, you know, like Marge Simpson becomes a substitute in these, you know. Of course, now you can just show PragerU videos, I guess. So
Trump U is really what you need to do.
We need to actually do a show on kind of education and more thing, because that's obviously pretty depressing. So anyway, happy real Labor Day, not real Labor Day, happy American Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day. Happy Scrappy Labor Day.
Happy Scrappy Labor Day. And I guess, you know, as an American, it's a chance to like grill a steak and go to the ball game, or go to the beach for your last time. But, you know, if you think about it, you know, take down the system, and remember, you know, think globally, guillotine locally, right?
Yeah, burn it all down. That's all we got to say.
Whenever we're the guillotine now, I think of like freaking Trump's people wanted to hang or execute Mike Pence, and he supports Pence still. Oh boy.
Pence,
anyway,
I think in that debate, Pence said he was very proud of the accomplishments of the Trump-Pence administration.
Yeah.
As he ended the Trump-Pence administration running for his life from Trump supporters.
Isn't it like, it's chilling that like Pence is kind of reasonable in American politics right now, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that might be the best case scenario. Mike Pence becoming president. He wouldn't do anything for 4 years. I mean, nothing get done, and then, you know, and then we can move on to the Kamala Harris years.
Yeah. That's just what we need.
Anyway.
All right. Yeah, I've been listening to Scrappy Labor Day.
Oh, wait. I want to say one other thing. And this is just kind of a pitch too. The other day, Scott had family obligations. So I interviewed Jody Evans of Code Pink. And I don't know if we've mentioned this. I think we may have, but there was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, an ugly, yeah, we did talk about this, an ugly New York Times hit piece, really boilerplate McCarthyite hit piece on Jody and her husband, is it Neville Roysinger, I believe is his name, and groups like No Cold War and Code Pink, obviously, and Tricontinental and DJ Prashad, and what's chilling about this is that this is kind of what liberals do, right? They did throughout the Cold War. The New York Times did it. It's full of innuendo. They create these like links. These are kind of conspiratorial links. Like it's kind of like what you hear from like the JFK people or QAnon, right? So and so did this, and so did this, and therefore, like, shit. So anyway, check that out. But even more importantly, like try to show them some support because we're all kind of vulnerable to these kinds of attacks where. And this is America, like, right? We live in this kind of society now where one person can complain or snitch, and somebody can say, "I don't like that book," and they pull it out for the whole state or something like that. So this interview with Jody Evans was really great, and these groups do good work, and what they're doing is they're speaking out for peace, no war with China, negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. They defend the Cuban Revolution, and so I think it's really important to kind of understand what these groups do, and you don't have to like everything they do. I mean, Scott and I don't agree with everything they say and do either, but they're on the side of the good guys, and the left should not be supporting McCarthyite attacks. The left should not be participating in these attacks against groups like Code Pink and No Cold War and Tricontinental. And
left shouldn't be supporting things like conflict in Ukraine or
no,
South China
exactly.
Sea.
Yeah, anti-imperialism has to once again become a core value of what we do. It's the other side of the coin. You have class struggle at home, anti-imperialism, and they work together, right? Because the more money you're spending abroad, the more you're doing in Ukraine or wherever. That's stuff you're not doing in Hawaii, other than a one-time $700 fee. The average monthly rent in Hawaii is like over $2,500, I think, or something like that. So you go to $700 fee.
Just also to bring it back around to Labor Day is that like, people are. I mean, I know that the unemployment is low and supposedly wages are good, but like we have a lot of people who are still living hand to mouth. A lot of people who can't make the rent or can't even afford food, and yet we're definitely there's huge amounts of medical debt going on in the world. People run GoFundMe's to be able to like cover their medical bills. And like, yeah, we're spending billions on, war in Ukraine. We're spending billions on maintaining 200 plus bases to contain China in the Asia Pacific. And it's just, there's just like labor needs to be stronger. Like Bob said, auto workers used to be 1 million workers. Now they're 150,000, but, and so they don't have the power that they used to. And we just need to be making trouble everywhere we can.
Yeah, I mean,
and not supporting huge amounts of money going into like war abroad.
Exactly. If you're supporting the war in Ukraine, if you're supporting the defense budget, like the squad votes were, right? Then that's attention and money that's not going to Hawaii, not going to East Palestine, not going to Flint, not going to Detroit, not going to Jackson, not going to healthcare, not going to what you give them, right? So
yeah,
if you want to consider yourself like having decent politics, being a good human, and all that kind of stuff, then you have to be anti-imperialist, and the idea. I mean, Russia's imperialist, sure, right? But so is the United States, so is China. I mean, to kind of create some kind of moral, division here between the United States and Russia is like ridiculous, right? I mean, in a sane world, Putin and Biden and Zelensky would probably be sharing a docket, together. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep that in mind too on this Labor Day, that it extends. We need to support working people all over, and just people who are struggling all over. So fight the power, and take care of each other. Remember what Che said at the thought of seeming ridiculous. The true revolutionary has got to make great feelings of love.
100%. If you like what you're hearing, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you're not subscribed, hit subscribe on YouTube. And if you like what we do a lot, and become a donor at greenredpodcast.org and hit that support button, become a patron at patreon.com/greenredpodcast. And if you listen to our audio platform, definitely give us a rate review, because that helps us with the algorithms. And like Bob said, Viva Che, and misbehave and make a lot of trouble, and enjoy your scrappy Labor Day.
Long-haired preachers come out every night I try to tell you what's wrong and what's right, but when asked about something to eat, they will answer in voices so sweet. You will eat by and by, in that glorious land in the sky, way up high, work and pray, live on hay. You get by in the sky when you die, that's a lie. The Starvation Army, they play, and they shout and they clap and they pray. When they got all your coins on the drum, they will tell you when you're on the bum. You will eat by and by, in that glorious land in the sky, way up high, work and pray, live on hay. You get by in the sky when you die, that's a lie. Holy rollers and jumpers come out, and they roll and they jump and they shout. Give your money to Jesus, they say, and you'll eat on that glorious day. You will eat by and by, in that glorious land in the sky, way up high, work and pray, live on hay. You get by in the sky when you die, that's a lie. Working folks of all countries unite, side by side we for freedom will fight. When this world and its wealth we have gained, to the crafters we'll sing this